Welcome to another episode of Discovering the Book of Mormon through Science and Exploration. The history of the Book of Mormon could have played out over the vast territory of the entire Western Hemisphere, or have taken place in a very limited area. There have been several, actually dozens, of well-intended models of where the Book of Mormon occurred. To begin the construction of our model, we need a starting point, that is, Lehi's beachhead in the Americas. So where did Nephi's ship land in the Americas? Based on reliable sources, the prophet Joseph Smith is believed to have taught that South America was the starting point of the Nephite history in the Promised Land. If this is true, we can start our model in South America. The prophet's devoted followers were teaching this on their missions as early as 1830. During their mission to the Lamanites, none other than Oliver Cowdery taught that Lehi landed in Chile. Oliver Cowdery wrote the manuscript of the Book of Mormon as it was translated by Joseph Smith. He was intimate in every word of the Book of Mormon and would have discussed it in length with the prophet. While in the Kirkland, Ohio area, Oliver Cowdery made this statement published in the Observer and Telegraph newspaper in Hudson, Ohio, March 18, 1830. According to the narrative given by one of these disciples, Oliver Cowdery, at their late exhibition in Kirkland, this new revelation, they say, is especially designed for the benefit, or rather for the Christianization of the Aborigines of America, who, as they affirm, are a part of the tribe of Manasseh, and whose ancestors landed on the coast of Chile 600 years before the coming of Christ, and from them descended all the Indians of America. Why was Oliver Cowdery's statement that Lehi landed in Chile so authoritative? He was the primary scribe for the Book of Mormon and the first historian of the church. Just 6 months after the publication of the Book of Mormon, the Lord called him to be the first missionary to the Lamanites. At that time, he was second only to Joseph Smith. Oliver had the gift of revelation, D&C 6:10-11, received the same gift of faith and power as Joseph Smith, D&C 17:7. With Joseph Smith, he was a presiding officer of the church, D&C 21, Introduction. Was the first preacher unto the church, D&C 21:12. Was commanded by the Lord, quote, to speak whenever led by the Comforter, end quote, D&C 28:4. Was ordained as a steward over revelation and commandments, D&C 73, and finally was trusted by the Lord to be one of the three witnesses of the Book of Mormon. Oliver Cowdery's statement that Lehi landed in Chile was given during his mission to the Lamanites. One of his companions on that mission was his brother-in-law, Peter Whitmer, Jr., who was advised by the Lord to, quote, give heed to the words and advice of thy brother, Oliver Cowdery. Further, prior to leaving on this mission, Oliver Cowdery signed a covenant to walk humbly before God and to do this glorious work according as he shall direct me by the Holy Ghost. 8 years later, a handwritten document leaves little doubt that the early leaders of the church believed that Joseph Smith taught them that Lehi landed in South America. The document was handwritten by Joseph Smith's scribe, Frederick G. Williams, a counselor to the prophet. The notes state that Lehi landed 30 degrees south of the equator in Chile. The written statement is found on the same page of paper as the body of a revelation that is now part of the Doctrine and Covenants. 4 influential apostles, Parley P. Pratt, Orson Pratt, Frederick G. Williams, and Franklin D. Richards, openly declared that the prophet taught that Nephi's ship landed
at 30 degrees south latitude in Chile. Again, these men loved the prophet and would not have taught falsehood or a doctrine contrary to what he had testified. The LDS Church included as a footnote in the 1879 edition of the Book of Mormon that Lehi landed in Chile. While some people want to rewrite history to fit their own theories, LDS General Authority and scholar B.H. Roberts, who served as assistant church historian for 31 years and wrote the 6-volume comprehensive history of the church, reminded us that the dominant belief among the early church leaders was that Joseph Smith taught that Lehi landed in South America. President Harold B. Lee, when still a member of the Quorum of the 12, stated, quote, "From the writings of the prophet Joseph Smith and of other inspired men, it seems that all are in agreement that the followers of Lehi came to the western shores of South America." In June 1968, Harold B. Lee said when organizing the Andes mission, quote, "As I spoke to the congregation, I was impressed by the Spirit of the Lord in a way in which I had seldom been impressed before, to tell the people that the land of Peru had been one of the most important lands in all the history and development of the people of the Book of Mormon." When I was serving my mission in Peru and Bolivia, the prophet and President Joseph Fielding Smith wrote to our mission declaring that our mission area had been the center of the church at the time of Christ's visit in the Americas.
Indeed, teaching that Lehi landed anywhere other than South America is teaching a false narrative and is proposing an absolute falsehood.
In our previous videos, we discussed how Nephi settled Cusco, Peru, the land of Nephi. If Lehi's beachhead was Chile, how did Nephi's company settle in Cusco, Peru? Nephi wrote that after leaving the place where they landed in the Promised Land, they made journeyings, that is, plural journeys, meaning more than one journey, before settling in the city of Nephi. The first journey was to the Isle of the Sun in Lake Titicaca, where they settled for a period of time on an isle of the sea, 2 Nephi 10:20. As we discussed in the episode, The Incas and the Book of Mormon, Nephi's party journeyed northward, separated from his older brother, and settled the Cusco Valley.
Today, we will discuss only one of the explicit clues that are found in the Book of Mormon that can help us develop a model for the Book of Mormon lands. In future episodes, we'll discuss other geographic figures mentioned in the Book of Mormon, including
a great mountain, a wilderness, the river Sidon, the narrow neck of land, the land of desolation, and a natural harbor used by Hagoth and others. In future episodes, we'll also identify candidates for the city of Bountiful, Zarahemla, and other Book of Mormon cities. Today, we'll identify only the seas of the Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon describes 4 seas that existed in the Book of Mormon lands. These were not the same seas from a different vista. They were different seas. These seas were a far distance from each other. We read that by the 1st century BC, the Nephites had spread out across,
quote, the whole earth, from the sea south to the sea north, from the sea west to the sea east. Helaman 3:8. We begin with this question. When translating the Book of Mormon, why did Joseph Smith use the word sea and not ocean or lake? The answer is his translation was perfect. From where Lehi originated, a sea meant a significant body of water. For example, the Dead Sea, a large body of landlocked saltwater. The Mediterranean Sea, a large inlet from the Atlantic Ocean, and even the relatively small freshwater lake, the Sea of Galilee. Nephi would have used the same terminology. In Quechua, the native language of Peru, the word Quechua refers to a large or small saltwater bodies as well as large or small freshwater lakes. In Quechua, Mamacucha means sea or large body of water. Hatuncucha meant a large body of saline water, an ocean or a large saline lake, and Cucha meant sea or lake.
Enabled with this knowledge, we can easily find the four seas or kuchas of the Book of Mormon. They are easy to find, and I believe that they are a witness to the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon.
There should be a consensus regarding the Nephites' West Sea, since Haggah sailed to Hawaii and perhaps other Polynesian islands. By default, the Pacific Ocean had to have been the West Sea. Furthermore, Nephi's ship landed in Chile.
When I asked an indigenous Andean what was the word for west in Quechua, he said to me, "We don't use the words west and east for directions. We simply say Mamacucha, which means the Pacific Ocean for west, and Andes Mountains for east. Andes being a derivative of Anti, which means east in Quechua."
Hatankuchum Poopó, or Sea Poopó, is a large saline body of water that receives its water from the freshwater lake Titicaca in the north. After Lake Quechua Titicaca, Quechua Poopó is the second largest lake in Bolivia and is the furthest south of all the four seas to be considered. When full, the sea covers an area of 997 square miles. The Sea Poopó is saline and, like the Dead Sea or the Great Salt Lake, receives its water via the Desaguadero River from the freshwater sea or Lake Titicaca. We don't know exactly when the Nephite expansion reached the Sea of the South, only that by 45 BC they had spread to all four seas mentioned in the Book of Helaman. In harmony with the Book of Mormon record, according to the San Andres University of La Paz, Bolivia, Quechua Poopó was first settled around 200 BC. Another name for Quechua Poopó is Uri Uri. In Quechua, Uri means spider. However, Urin means south in Quechua. Next, for the Sea of the East, we can turn to the great body of fresh water that English speakers call Lake Titicaca. The proper name for the body of water is the native language is Titicaca, which means, of course, the Sea of Titicaca. The sea is so large that when the Spanish first saw it, they believed they had reached the Atlantic Ocean. The massive freshwater sea is 138 miles long and is the world's highest navigable body of water. Because of the multi-groups of indigenous people who have lived near the lake, there is no singular name for the lake except that it was the Sacred Lake. Perhaps the Book of Mormon provides the name of Lake Titicaca when Christ visited the Americas. There are the remains of at least 3 sunken cities in Lake Titicaca. One of these could have been the city of Moroni, which was built near the, quote, East Sea, Alma 50:13, and later sank into the sea, 3 Nephi 8:9.
It appears that its size, location, and likely references in the Book of Mormon makes Lake Titicaca the East Sea.
Finally, the Book of Mormon lands had a North Sea. This sea is by far the easiest to locate. Why? Its very name in Quechua means the North Sea.
Thanks to the research of David William Pereira, a student of the Book of Mormon and member of the church in South America, we can now identify the lake that goes by its original Book of Mormon name place. That is the North Sea, or Chinchayqucha in Quechua.
After Titicaca, Lake Huron, the name given by the Spanish, is Peru's second largest lake. It has been named one of the three possible sources of the Amazon River, recently measured to exceed the Nile River as the longest river on Earth. The sea is located in the northern part of Peru. The lake was an important resource for the ancient inhabitants of the Andes and has an area of 226 square miles, 4 times larger than the Sea of Galilee in Palestine. The native people still call the lake by its original name, Chinchayqucha. Chinche means north. Quechua means sea.
In other words, the indigenous people of the Andes still call the lake by its original name, the North Sea. A coincidence? Hardly. Discover more about the Book of Mormon by subscribing to this channel, or you can visit our website, christinperu.com, where you can discover our books and learn more about our annual tours to Peru. Thank you.